Right. Welcome back to Sober Sunday. We are glad to be here. I know many of you have been waiting. This is Simon Bevy, your host for Sober Sunday. We're glad to continue this sober conversation, stimulating conversations about life, about relationships, and issues that affect each and every one of us. I'm glad out of Transform Nations to week after week to come to you from wherever you are. There are many of you who have been watching us and joining us from all parts of the world. We thank you for many of you keep texting us and asking about our programs and what we are doing. It's really a blessing to be together to have these conversations. And so today we continue with what we began last time. We were talking about love lost, when love is lost, when relationships break. You've been married, it looked like a marriage made in heaven, and for different reasons, marriage doesn't work, or the dreams are shattered that you had. What is one to do? What is the hope of those people who have gone through divorce, separation, and broken marriages? And what are the challenges that they face in terms of thinking about remarriage, thinking about redemption of the marriage and coming back together, thinking about how to share properties that they have acquired together over those years, and thinking about children and custody. So today, those are the issues that we're going to be talking about. I'm glad to have a very good panel here that are going to be sharing their own personal stories, but also the challenges that they have faced, and we are going to be speaking into that. So let me start with the ladies. Ladies first. I'm grateful to have Jennifer Washira here. She has her own personal story around separation and divorce. But more than that, she has come around and she's part of a program called Divorce Care that she runs and directs in one of the churches in Nairobi, that is Parklands Baptist Church. And she works a lot with people who have gone through these experiences. So Jennifer, we're glad to have you here. I know you have a wealth of experience and stories around this matter. So feel free to say hi to us and tell us a little bit more about yourself as a way of introduction.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm glad to be here today. As you've heard, my name is Jennifer Washira, and I would really want to appreciate Pastor Simon for this opportunity to be on this platform. We believe it's a God ordained. Yeah. As a person, yes, I was married for 12 years. And like everybody else, you get to this marriage with high hopes, with dreams, with vision, and then you get in on one way without any plans of ever getting out of it. Yes, and being in this marriage with two daughters, the first one is 19 and the second is 10 years old, that God blessed us with. Yeah, it was all rosy to begin with, the first few years, 4 years.
And, yes. And don't worry, Jennifer, we're going to come back to the story. I think just wanted you to say hi first, and then we're going to come back to the story. But thank you for the introduction. You're already introducing the story, which is good. So thank you and welcome. We're glad that you agreed to come. Then we have my learned friend, Leah Kigwada, who works a lot in these cases of custody and divorce and all of that. You tell us more about yourself and what you do, but we're glad to have you here. Karibu sana.
Asante. Asante.
So you can say a little bit about yourself. Anything
okay, all right. You want me to do the intro? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, I practice child and family law here in Nairobi. I also practice real estate law. And yes, so I have a bit of experience in these matters, and it is great to be here, Pastor Simon. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much. Let me introduce the gentleman and then we'll get down to the conversations. Mr. Robert, we are glad to have you here as well. You're involved in corporate and business ventures, and you have your own personal story as well that you will share briefly with us, and challenges that you faced around your marriage. So we're glad to have you here, and thank you for agreeing to come to the show. Say hi to us, and feel free to add anything I've not said.
Thank you, Pastor Simon. My name is Robert Karanja. I'm a father of 2 sons, 11 going on 12 and 9 going on 10. Separated for 4 years and recently divorced early this year. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think Dr. Mugambi is not a stranger to you all. He was here last week. He gave a very good perspectives out of the Bible, but also in practical life. And just to say, there's some who are asking for the book that Dr. Mugambi has written. And so we reached out to you, but in case you'd like that book, let us know. I think Mugambi, you can mention that, but introduce yourself as well. We're glad to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, well, I'm glad to be of service and, for us to have these difficult conversations. I think, about the book, this is When Life Happens. It's a book about some of the difficult things, navigating some of the difficult things in life, including, family matters like this. And yeah, we can talk about the book and how to get it a little later.
All right, well, thank you very much again, everyone. Let's start with you, Jennifer. You had begun your story. And let me invite all of you who have joined us online. Please feel free to host a watch party, invite your friends. Some of you are not going through divorce or separation or anything like that, but it's good to hear some of the things we're going to be talking about so that you can help and assist and work with those around you in your community who are going through this. So this is really not only for those who have come to this unfortunate place, but it's to say, in spite of what life brings at you, you can walk out of it victoriously because we all struggle in different areas. And so we are a community and we want to invite you. Those of you who are not married, those of you who are in marriage, this is relevant to everyone. So invite your friends and do watch parties and let's have conversations. Feel free to ask questions there. We have a lawyer who is very involved in this and she's going to be able to answer a lot of questions around these matters. So Jennifer, let's get back to you. You were saying how long you were married and then things did not work. Just go ahead and give us a summary of that story.
Yeah, as I had started saying, I was married for 12 years. And just like everybody else, just getting into that kind of relationship with one aspect of it that I'm in, and I'm not getting out, and just trying to make things work. And as I got things inside there, with that big dream, with that vision, that things are going to work it out, and it was all merry, rosy in the first 4 to 5 years. But after that, I can talk of hell broke loose. And as much as everybody else, you try to make things work as you are inside there. You try hanging on there. Things got to our situation, Yes, and here there are children, they are watching what is happening, because now when it got into emotional abuse, it got into physical, and all this time we are in one, confined in one space, and the environment became toxic. But if in that year, I know there are so many things that I tried, or rather we tried, talking to some few people who could help us just to solve what was ailing the marriage at that time, and also trying counseling, and also even some spiritual guidance. And I tell you, it was not easy. It was not easy. That is the point. I lost myself. I lost my sanity in the name of just trying to protect my marriage, you know, trying to protect my name, trying to protect my children. But the environment just turned to be something else, you know. Yes, and I thought when things continue this way, I think we will end up in statistics of now where other things go, like you cannot bear one another in the same space again. And that is the time that personally I was not even able, I mean, I was not ready to leave. I was still giving it time to work, but my ex-spouse just decided to leave himself, which for me, I thought it's a relief, but it was painful for the last 8 years that I've been out. It has not been easy dealing with a breakup, you know. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and it's true, it can never be easy because, as we said last week, this is like death of something that was alive. There was hope, there was you know, you have interacted together, worked together, certain things. How long did you say you are married again?
I was married for 12 years.
12 years. Yeah, 12 years is a lot in a relationship, and it gets to a point where it's not working. You said you tried severally, but it came to an end, and it's definitely painful. So thanks for sharing that. So eventually you separated. How long did it take before divorce happened?
Now, immediately he walked out, and we took a bit of time. Like I didn't mention before that happened, I had like 3 episodes of other separations, you know, like going and coming back, you know, trying to make things work, going and coming back. But this time round, after now he left, I think it was a time like just to have a permanent solution for this. Now it took like 3 years, before now we finally decided that we need to have this marriage dissolved.
Okay. Okay, and we're going to come back to you, and you just tell us how that process of divorce and then now the issues of children and all of that came up, and then we're going to have Leah begin to speak into it. But Robert, let's also hear your story in brief, how long you had been married and, you know, how the marriage began to end. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Pastor Simon. So we were married and lived as man and wife for 8 years. And then sometime in October 2016, went through a separation. We have 2 sons. So those 2 boys are now 11 and 9, sorry, 11 and 8, going on to 12 and 9. So they were fairly young at the time. And like any other marriage, of course, it started off with a lot of hope. No one gets married with the intent that, you know, you'll eventually go through separation. And so you try and make it work as best as you can. And but when you do get to a point where there's a communication breakdown, you're not seeing eye to eye on almost anything. And so we got to that point. So separation was difficult. It's not an easy process for anybody to go through. And I think just to give you from a man.
Sorry, Robert, are we losing you? Okay, it must be a network issue. All right, we had lost you a bit, Robert. Can you hear us now? Okay, I think we are going to get back to you. Hello? Okay, we'll give you a minute just to as your network stabilizes. So we're going to get back to you. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think he's going to be coming back. But Leah, let me just ask you before we begin to All right, I think he is back before we come to you, Leah. Robert, sorry, I know these network issues. So you were saying you got to a point where there was communication breakdown and then eventually separation. Just go ahead. All right.
Yes. So as I was saying, Pastor Simon, I've just switched networks, so this should be better.
Okay.
So yes, I was saying from a man's perspective, it becomes difficult because you do get judged a lot, and so separation is not an easy process to go through for anybody. And I think when you and I were speaking yesterday, I told you it's something that I would not wish on my worst enemy. It's not an easy process to go through. So we were separated from October 2016, and then our divorce went through in March of 2020. Yeah.
How did it feel like when eventually the divorce happened?
I don't know how to describe it. Let me just say I can't remember, because at that point, I guess you feel it's a point of no return, right? There's some sort of finality in the process. And for me, my approach was maybe a bit unorthodox, because I went and I prayed a lot about it. And I prayed over my children also, because ultimately what I was looking for was peace and peace of mind.
Okay, and I know all of these issues are difficult. I mean, I was pushing a bit into it because, Leah, I think men and women process these matters differently. And, I guess it's a lot easier sometimes for women to understand the emotions that they're going through. Not that it's easier in terms of the pain, but you're able to process the emotions. A lot of men find it harder in the sense of emotional processing. And I think, as we had last week, a lot of men just focus on other things as a way of processing because of just the difficulty of handling the pain. And maybe, Leah, we can come to you, and before we even get to the legal and other issues, practical issues, you're working with different couples and people, and you have a Christian background yourself. How has this been for you to watch these things happen in families?
Interestingly, Pastor Simon, I grew up with a single mother. My parents split up when I was 9 years old. And so for a long time, I resisted the idea that the reason I do this is because of my own family background. I pushed back on that, and I said, anybody can become a family lawyer. It's not because of my background that I'm a family lawyer, but I'm currently doing a biblical entrepreneurship class, which also takes you through identity and purpose. And one of the things I've picked up from that class is that God will use you for your purpose, not in spite of your past, but because of your past. He will use that. So for me, I think people come with a lot of stigma, expecting to be judged. But I mean, for me, I find it very interesting that the stigma is external. I think maybe because of my background, I'm unable to stigmatize my clients. I'm unable to give, for some of them, I'm also able to give them hope, because they see that I tell them, your children will be fine. Look at me, I'm not perfect. I'm not, I'm not the president of the Republic of Kenya, but I'm doing work. I'm doing important work. So your kids will be fine. So so for me, the experience has been very interesting, because it's also because of the link with my background, and the fact that my mom was herself separated for a very, she still is separated for, since I was a little girl. And so I come with that experience of not having, feeling that there should be stigma around my clients. yeah. So that's how it's been for me. I guess also, and then
Okay.
when I have younger maybe I can say something about when I have young students. You know, I actually mainly hire from the Christian Union. When I was at Kenyatta University, I lectured at Kenyatta University for a number of years. I was the Christian Union patron. I am also asked to do a bit of patron work for the Kenya School of Law, Christian Union. And so I mainly hire, students who ask to work with me are students who know me through the Christian Union. So it's very interesting also to see them grow in terms of ministering to people who are hurting and are going through a hard process, and thinking through what would Jesus do with this person who has come to our law firm for legal assistance, but we must do it. We must assist them legally from a point of ministry. So it's interesting to see the younger students grow in that perspective, in their views of divorce, when they are coming from a Christian background.
Well, yeah, thank you. And as you're saying, it's really ministry in many ways. I mean, you're helping people deal with pain, but also deal with very practical things that they have to deal with. Let me bring you in, Dr. Mugambi, when life happens. Jennifer has shared, and Robert, and you get to that place, you look at the kids, a lot of people begin to judge themselves and condemn themselves and say, what are you doing to the children? And feel very guilty because of what is happening. You've come to this place and the kids are suffering. And so you get into a place of guilt, and that could bring a lot of pressure and condemnation to many people. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree with that, and say that a lot of people, part of it, there are many different angles to this. So for most couples, you try to do it the right way. You got your family into this. You call the pastor, and then you did the wedding, and you said all those nice things. Sometimes, maybe you got creative. You wrote a little poem to talk about your undying love for your spouse, or you got the musician to sing a song, and then 5 years down the line, 8 years down the line, probably more usually somewhere between 9 and 12 years down the line, as it seems to fall apart. The feeling of personal failure, and I don't know if Robert and Jennifer would identify with this, regardless of who started this, who started the process, whoever is at fault, the overwhelming feeling of failure, overwhelming feeling of loss, pain, grief. Those are very real emotions. And I also want to affirm something that was mentioned a little earlier. I think as men, we don't have number one, the tools to process those emotions, and number two, the forums to sit down and talk about those. And so, divorce care is a fairly recent phenomenon. So yeah, those kinds of feelings. And for our listeners, if someone is listening to this and saying, well, it's different, it's really just my own fault, why am I feeling guilty about this, and I'm not the aggressor. It's a normal thing. I interviewed a number of people writing the book, and these are feelings that we feel, and they stem, in my view, in my reading of scripture, they stem from the fact that this kind of pain and separation and dysfunctionality in relationships is not what God intended. And so when something happens to us that God didn't intend, different kinds of things, whether it's pain, illness, death, those are not things that were in God's original plan in Genesis chapter 1. And whenever some of those things happen, the end of a meaningful relationship, it comes with the dysfunctionality and the pain, because this is not God's plan. This is not our spiritual DNA. It's deep down inside, that's not what God intended for us. And that, I think, is why scripturally and in terms of our understanding of the Bible. That's why we experience those things. There are other reasons, but that's a spiritual reason why.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And we're coming back to you, Jennifer. We'll begin to go more now into the issues of now it's happened. The pain is there, and I've walked and prayed with many people, and I've felt the pain. And it's like, even when obviously the other person is a main aggressor, like we say in law, Leah, that you never carry 100% of the blame. There's always a feeling that I also contributed. I said yes to this relationship. I've been part of it, and that's a Christian perspective as well. None of us is ever 100% righteous. We are all broken in some ways, and others would be more broken than others. But you come out of there feeling the guilt, feeling the spiritual brokenness, maybe not being able to connect well with the Lord. And that's why I want to advise as many of you as find yourselves in this place, never walk alone. Never really walk alone. You need people around you, because pain gets intense. And when you don't have some other people around you, it can become very hard. As Jennifer, you said, you get to a point where you don't feel sober because of the pain you feel. Pain as a way of just making you feel like you're lost in the woods. But Jennifer, you get to that place, he leaves. What happens next? You have children there, you have properties, eventually divorce happens.
Yeah, Pastor Simon, as I mentioned, yes, he leaves, and then what comes is guilt. Now I started evaluating what could I have done wrong, especially when somebody walks out on you. I thought it's better when you walk out on someone, it feel like a big relief, other than somebody walking out on you. But when just evaluating what happened, because there are all these reason, maybe the communication breakdown, which I was personally not ready. I felt you have offended me, and I'm not ready to engage in this kind of communication. And also from the background where I've come from, just seeing that perfect couple, my mom and my dad. So I expected to find the same in this a marriage setup, which now I wanted him to be a superhuman, like no mistakes, so I was not ready to bear the mistakes that he made. So and then I got into the situation of reacting to what he's doing. And once I reacted, I felt that I escalated the situation. Like it was not better anymore. It was not bearable, and the situation became worse and worse and worse. So, and all this, as you're talking, I just thought sometimes we think of just blaming the other person. They did, but it takes two to tango. There's also what I contributed to the breakup of this marriage. So this time that he has left, and now I'm on this side alone with the children struggling. And first, even before you get to the physical struggle, there's now the emotional struggle and turmoil, try to understand, why I'm a failure, why did he leave? I know maybe I'm not looking good, maybe there's this thing I did not do right, and all that. And for sure, at that point, you lose yourself completely. You lose your sanity. You are not productive at all. And even you have children in the mix who are looking up to you, but you are not in a position even to provide any care to them at that particular point. So I know I took a lot of time, and what really hurt me most, because I was so angry. I was so angry and bitter. And this anger, it just came even to a physical form of just feeling the acid boiling in me. It affected even my health, that I felt so much acidity. And I felt the unforgiveness that I carried for this person. I felt like he did not really deserve to do this. And I know there are three people that I really carried with a lot of pain, and I felt they're part of this failure. And that was myself. I blamed myself for this failure. Second, I blamed God. I was like, God, where were you in all this? You are able to just to stop it before it got worse. And also I blamed the other person now. It's like, why did you have to do this? Why did you have to leave? Yes, so there was a lot of blame and trying to find my place now, because I had totally lost all what I had hanged on in at the beginning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and we can go forward now. The children are there. Of course, they know that they had a dad and they're going through a lot. And eventually you have to pursue this divorce and begin to think about child custody and all of that. Did that get ugly?
Yes, it got very, very ugly with a lot of drama. Because as Dr. Mugambi was mentioning, okay, this is not, it's also spiritual connected, and it's not something that you are ready just to let it go. You feel like you want to fight it out. And here there are children who are involved, and all the time they're asking for their daddy. They're not understanding in this situation, why is our daddy not here? And then just to get them to understand why in school, you know, like their daddy picked their other friends in school, but they were not picked by their daddy. So it was a place of just trying to explain to the children again why the change has occurred, which is not a very good situation to be at, because even personally you are also struggling with the same. So even getting to this point of just pursuing the divorce or the dissolution of now my marriage, it got to a point now after I talked the 3 separations that had happened, and it was like, now I need to bring this to a finality. Even with the advice of the lawyer that I had at that time, it was like your relationship and the breakup has had a lot of drama, you know, because it was not that easy. A lot of drama, just trying even to make us be parents. It was difficult because we are using children to fight, you know, by denying them what they need, because you want to reach out to the other person, you know, you need to hurt the other person. So you hold on to the children, or you deny them something that they require from us as parents. So it was full of drama, even as we got to that point of just getting to have our marriage dissolved.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're going to get back to you, but before I come to you, Leah, so that you can just also tell us, sometimes there are mistakes we do when we separate and we don't clarify some things, then in the process, children get to be hurt a lot more. So maybe you can guide us from your experience, just when people separate, what are some of the things immediately they need to take care of to make sure that this doesn't go badly? We can come to you and then we'll come back to Robert.
Okay, I think Jennifer has already alluded to one of the biggest issues that people should do and that people should stop doing, using the children to fight your battles. I think that's the big one that I think everybody feels that that's the last leverage they have to hurt the other party, because the children love both of you. And I think it is very important, because the law gives you an opportunity to agree on what should happen with the children. And, you know, it becomes very dramatic, as Jennifer has pointed out. There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of fighting. But, you know, from a legal perspective, it's actually quite straightforward, because the issue is you are no longer living together. The Constitution says that parents have equal parental responsibility, joint and equal parental responsibility. That is also in the Children Act. So really, from an objective way, if you stood aside from the conflict and thought about the children, from a legal perspective, it's very straightforward. The parents are now living apart. With whom will the children live? That's the first question. And then how will the other party be involved in the children's lives? The person who is not living with the children on a day-to-day basis. And then the children need to eat, they need to go to school, they need clothes, they need just the basics. How will you agree on how to provide for the children? So if you stood away from the emotions and the pain, it's a straightforward question that people can sit down and agree on. But I find that it's in fact, the issue of the children is, I think, the most difficult to determine, and mainly because of that one thing. If you would tell yourself, we will not use the children to fight, we will protect the children. On the matter of protecting the children, we may disagree on everything else, but let's agree on one thing. Let's try and protect these children, safeguard them, and protect them from the fallout, like minimize the effect of the fallout on the children. If you could do, if people could do that, they could have that conversation where you try and resolve that as soon as possible, I think it would solve a lot of things going forward, and it would really be an issue of, it would mitigate the pain of the fallout for the parties as well as for the children.
Okay, let me just ask you a quick one. And I've been involved in a few places of helping negotiate parental responsibility agreements. What are the 2 or 3 or 4 issues that should address even before some people don't go to court immediately, but they're able to sit down and agree? We're now separate. Who is has primary custody, and what are the rights of the other person? What are the 3 or 4 issues to agree on at that point, even before you think of court later?
Yeah, the 3 or 4 issues is with whom will the children live? What's the best way to keep the stability of the children? Now that you're living apart, you're both their parents, you both have equal parental responsibility. With whom will the children live in a way that safeguards their stability the most? Number one. Then the other issue that you need, the other issue you need to think about is that the children have basic needs. They need food, clothing, shelter, they need education, and they need medical care. How is that going to be split in a way that protects them, protects their stability? And then the third issue is the parent who is not going to be living with the children on a day-to-day. How will that parent be able to spend parenting time with the children? I think those are the key things that that parties would need to discuss and agree, preferably agree, before it becomes a full-blown battle.
All right. Before we come to Robert, Leah, I found that in many cases, either the man would say, I'm not leaving the house or stay in this house, it's a matrimonial home, or the lady will say, I'm not leaving, and one of them leaves. Is there any guidance as to who should remain behind?
You know, Pastor Simon, I find that such an interesting question, because we all want to own homes, but I found that if you rent, it removes one big, you know, it's one less big hurdle over who gets left, who gets left behind. And then we also have our culture where you went left and went to your mother, you know, as a wife. Usually our culture is that it is the wife who leaves, but then now there's also, there are discussions, you know, there comes discussions about who did what. And if it is so and so who did the wrong thing, they are the ones who should leave. So there are a lot of discussions about that. But then really, there are no legal guidelines. It would be good if people are civil and decide what is the best way to protect the sanity, the health of the parties and the children. And so, you know, so that that decision is reached in a way that is safe. Because, you know, I mean, sometimes that is the decision, holding on to the property that you built, you put in your sweat, blood, and tears, or you bought, that can even create situations of terrible violence. So I think one, safety, if think about your safety. If you're the person who is likely to suffer, you know, a lack of safety, or the children are going to be unsafe, even if you built that house, or that house is, you know, that will be a decision for later. What is your entitlement to the house? That will be a decision for later. But think about safety first. And, you know, as Jennifer alluded to, a toxic environment, I think about how toxic that environment is, and how much longer you're willing to, you want to risk your life and the health, and your health and the life and the health of the children, on the basis that that it is a matrimonial home. So I find it, I mean, every time I step back and think, we all want, from the time I think you're in your 20s, you want to own a house. But when a marriage relationship breaks down, that owning a house actually becomes a big problem, because the issue is who's going to move. People who rent just, you know, think about the you know, they just, you know, move faster than. Yeah, so it's, I find it's a very interesting thing.
Pastor Simon, let me jump in there and say that it's very important what Leah is saying about safety of the individuals involved, safety of the children, obviously, but safety of men.
Doctor,
well.
we cannot see you. Are you able to put on your
sorry.
video?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, and I said, safety of everyone, safety of the children, of course, paramount, safety, of the wife. But increasingly, I'm now finding situations where we also talk about safety and mental health of the man. And that needs to factor into the conversation as well. And if there are men listening to this and you're in a toxic, unsafe, sometimes even physically violent state, you don't need to stay in that place and get medical emergencies and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
let me
excellent.
also add, Pastor Simon, if I may, that there is an act that came into force in 2015 called the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. And that act does allow you to go to court and ask the court for exclusive possession of the matrimonial home or of the matrimonial house in a situation of domestic violence. What I would like to advise people, though, is that although that act does allow, the law allows for you to get exclusive occupation or exclusive possession of the house, many times the court will want to hear the other side before they make that decision. And so that's why safety is key, as Pastor Kiama is saying, because if you go to court asking the court for exclusive possession and the court does not give you those orders and says, we want to hear the other side, it means you serve this person whom you are saying is violent with the papers, with a date 2 weeks away where they'll come and tell the court why they should either not move out or whether why they should be the ones to stay in the house. And those are two very tricky, and that's a very tricky situation to be in, where you are both in the same house and you're waiting for a court to decide who should stay in the house. And then also, as Pastor Kiama is saying, when he talks about the safety of men, and now mix that with our culture, where the house belongs to the man, even where it is rented, the lease is probably in his name. The landlord never even asks, what was the wife's name. So it becomes a very interesting and tricky situation in terms of who stays in a matrimonial home.
That's right. I think at the end of the day, life is about fairness and justice. And in this case, especially the protection of the children. So I think those are important things for us to consider. For us as men, who many times culturally, we have those privileges of either the property being written in our name or things like that, or expectations that the woman should be the one to leave. I think the sober question for both men and women is what is fair in this situation? What is going to be helpful to the children? And the other issues we can sort out later. I think everyone needs to come to a place of sobriety. I love what Carol Rariera has said. She's our friend, she's a counseling psychologist, and she says, the choice to protect the children in the midst of a separation/divorce is a very mature choice that bears good fruit in the long run. And she says, divorce by itself does not destroy children, but using them to fight is what eventually will hurt them deeply. So thank you for saying that. Let's come to you, Robert. Let's proceed with your story. So eventually separation happens. Did you stay with the children or did they go with their mom?
No, the children went with their mother initially. And so I spent, a significant amount of time working on what I would call deconstructing myself. And let me just explain that a bit. Deconstructing in the sense that deconstructing the man that I had become during marriage, and through a lot of prayer, trying to figure out who's the man that God would want me to be, right? And so, after separation, we did have a fairly tedious custodial matter, a lot of back and forth, and that's not an easy process for anybody. And I think if I can describe it, I'll just describe it as the court process does not have any winners. In fact, in my view, it's a lose-lose situation for everybody involved. And so it's not a process that I would recommend for people to go through. If you can have these discussions beforehand, I think that would be a better way of approaching it. But going through a court process, you're almost both guaranteed to lose-lose. And so I went through this process of deconstruction and literally just tried to work on resetting myself back to who I felt God wanted me to be. And it's not an easy process, but I spent a lot of time on my mental health, my spiritual health, and also my physical health. And one of the things, Pastor Simon, that was a big benefit to me was when I joined the men's BSF program. We would do the Bible study fellowship programs on Monday. And so that gave me an opportunity. I think it's Pastor Mugambi who said that, men don't have many avenues to talk and change. And they do have down and talk and exchange. End up picking up a lot of the wrong advice, advice that's not really helpful. I found my men's BSF really to be a pillar of me working on, deconstructing myself and essentially reconstructing myself. In October of 2018, which is actually September of 2018, just over 2 years ago, I also gave my life to Christ. And that again was part of this deconstructing process to reconstruct this individual. And I made a very deliberate decision, despite everything that was going on and everything that was happening, to focus on being the best father that I can be to my children. I'm very close to my children, extremely close to my 2 sons. And I decided that I will make a very deliberate decision to focus on my children as much as I was focusing also on reconstructing myself. And so I think part of the reconstruction process also included, building up my professional credentials again, because I felt I had lost some of them, So just building that again to where I wanted to be. And there's something that stood out to me that I was just taking this note down as we were talking earlier, which is, it kept ringing in my mind. I felt that, at the end of the day, I am who God says I am, and I'm not who others say I am. I am who God says I am. Yeah. And to me, that kept ringing in my mind, and that was my focus. Right? And so I found the more that I focused on my children, my spiritual health, my mental health, my physical health, I was swimming, running, doing all sorts of things. And of course, serving in my church, Salvation and men's BSF, I was able to then overcome some of these challenges that I would otherwise not have been able to overcome if I had not become this new individual.
Okay. So I think what you're saying, it's good to spend that time as you go through that season of separation to look into your life, to deal with the issues that come up. I think things like this, they reveal a lot inside of us. When a crisis like this happens, you get to see yourself for who you are. You begin, and it's important to be self-aware and to begin to be at a place. I think I've met a lot of men in Man Enough who have just gone through divorce and separation, and they're at a very raw place, a place which is low but also raw, and they're beginning to deal with these things. And just being around other men, whether BSF or Man Enough or any other place, for the women, I think there are a lot more opportunities to be around other people and think through them, so that out of it you would become a better person in spite of the pain. I think I've quoted before Socrates, who said, a life not unexamined is not a life worth living. And sometimes when we get to a place like this, it's important to look inward and see some of the issues we need to deal with. So before I come to you, Dr. Mugambi and then Leah, let me just ask Jennifer one other question in terms of just dealing with properties and things like that. Just what are the other challenges that you faced through this divorce? Later, we're going to come to divorce care and what you're doing and how people could join in. But let me ask you, what are some of the other challenges that came up that we could speak into, especially in terms of property and who owns what and what should be split in which way? What else came up?
Okay. One thing I can say, it's unfortunate or fortunate we did not have any properties to fight over. So that kind of gave me a relief. But I know the area that we spend a lot of years in court fighting is about the children. That's where now the whole thing was all about, because that is the only thing that we could hold on to, both of us, since we did not have property. Yes, but as it went by, I know it really affected the children, since now they had even to appear in court to be interviewed, like who do they want to stay with, or rather, they had to appear before the magistrate at a tender age. And I know we really exposed them to some kind of humiliation and torture that it was not necessarily possible if we were able just to be amicable and just agree and just to come together on a round table and agree how to go through that with the children. But finally, when the judgment came, I know, okay, I was given custody of our two daughters while he was given visitation rights. And of course, the other provisions of school fees and how they'll get their other needs, Yeah, but at the end of it, as Robert was saying, it was like both of us had lost, since now we are not really able to be, we have to be forced by the court to do what as parents we can willingly agree to do, because of the thing like the pride and that situation of like one of us has to win. Yeah, so in my situation, what we focused more is about the children, since we had no properties to fight over.
Okay, I'm going to come to you, Dr. Mugambi, to just speak. I think the two of them have said, if as parents we can talk a lot more, we can save the children a lot of pain. But then we are humans. You feel you have rights, you feel you're offended, you feel like you have to fight for this, you feel like you're not man enough or woman enough if you let some things go. How do you begin to deal with some of those difficult things to make life a lot easier?
I think a number of people watching this session are actually are not married. So that's where you start. Prevention always better than cure. If you're listening to this, you're dating someone or you want to date someone, married life is not a competition. Married life is a building life together. And my encouragement to anyone listening to this right now, and you're not married, or you are waiting for Mr. Right or Miss Right to come, start figuring out how to build relationship with someone, a relationship that is I don't know what the term is, equilateral, a way of being being cordial, hospitable, friendly, all those things in Corinthians 13, patience, kindness, love, those things are tested in marriage. Now, if you're already inside there and your marriage is going well, build on those things. Build on those things right now because they're going to be useful. I think the challenge comes where you have started and you have made some missteps, and you've moved in marriage and it's year 2, maybe you've had some drama as I think we've dealt with the stages of marriage in this segment. So once you get into the drama and all of that, that's where some of the perspective gets lost. And you might be listening to me right now and you're saying, well, no, you don't know my husband. My husband is this kind of person. Or no, you don't know my wife. My wife is this kind of person. The truth of the matter is, I may not know you personally, but I know that your husband or your wife is not an angel. If they are an angel or if they are perfect, they are not supposed to be on this planet. They're supposed to be somewhere else. And so I can guarantee you that your spouse is not perfect. Yes, neither are you. And one needs to begin to build in themselves the skills. I really like something that Robert has said, really, and I want to focus on that just for a moment and say, it is impossible for us to live the kind of life that we need to live, especially in marriage, because in marriage, the best parts of you are highlighted, but the worst parts of you come out and they are open to someone else. If you're single, your worst parts of yourself can be hidden. If you're married, when you wake up in the morning with all your whatever it is that is in your eyes before you clean up yourself, that is how it is psychologically. The other person can see your your vulnerabilities. So all of that to say, if you're already in your marriage, you're sensing your marriage is in trouble, I think there's a place to look inward and see what can I do to build myself up. I think that's what I would say. Now it's very complicated when you get into the legal process. It's very, because the legal process I don't know what you would say as a lawyer, but for me as a lay person, I say that the law isn't very clever, and I think they have a term for that. The law is this inanimate thing that is supposed to force you to do what you have been unable to do by yourself. And because of that, the last thing you want to do is to subject yourself or your children into that process. But if you do get there, the only way you can be able to navigate your humanness, to navigate the difficulty of this, is by appealing and by conforming to a power greater than you. And I believe only God can help you at that instance. And if you find that it is difficult for you to be patient, the truth of the matter is, you're human. All of us struggle with patience. That's why the Bible says we need to learn to be patient. Otherwise, if it was easy for us, then Christ wouldn't need to remind us about patience. And so because of that, I think it's important to submit yourself to a power that is greater than you. Only God can help you, and he will not perfect you, but he'll give you the necessary tools for you to be able to do that. It is possible. Excellent. Very difficult, but it is possible to be able to navigate this with grace.
Excellent. I think a big thing I would say, and it's a fact of all relationships, is humility. That we all struggle with a measure of pride. And pride always makes us see ourselves as being better than the other person, and therefore we fight out of a sense of justification. But humility brings you to a place where you consider the other person and you consider what is right and what is just. Humility doesn't mean you give up your rights or you allow other people to walk all over you, but it means you're able to let go. Even forgiveness is really a function of humility and being in that place. Let me just say this before I come to you, Leah. I'd like for you to answer several things. I'll throw you, all the hard things. Ownership of properties and whether it's crucial for people to have joint titles so that when you get into divorce is a lot easier to deal with. We're also talking about joint custody. Someone has asked, Kakuti has asked Mutindi, why is it we can't have joint custody? Then, of course, there's always a feeling from a lot of men that the law favors the women when it comes to custody of children. And I don't know what you would say to that. It would be good to hear from a lawyer who has dealt with all of these issues. And then any other advice you will give around those custody and property matters. But before then, let me just say to everyone who is listening, thank you for many of you So many good comments, a lot of you active and talking about what we are saying here. Thank you very much for the conversations and your writing back some of the statements that are being made here. Thank you. We appreciate that. Want to invite those of you who have not interacted with our programs. We're on our last leg of the programs. This is the last we are doing this year. We just launched Man Enough for the Men, and we want to invite you to sign up. We only have 1 week to admit any more people. We have EZA as well, which is for the ladies. Again, a perfect place for ladies to get together and deal with the issues as we redefine femininity. Then we have Intentional Mom and Intentional Dad, which is on parenting, and it would help a lot. And we have had a lot of people who are separated, divorced, who have taken those courses just to understand how to deal better with taking care of the children. So you're all welcome. All of these are available online. I think I mentioned last week we have the boys mentoring course that is closing down. We have almost 300 boys who are going through mentoring for 7 weeks. And in case you have a boy between 7 and 17, you're welcome to sign them up. So check out our program, Transform Nations, and join us as we continue to grow in this Matters family. Leah.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor Simon. Let me start with joint custody and say that where paternity is not in dispute, the court always gives joint custody. So it's very rare that the court will give sole custody to one person, where there is no question as to whether the father is the father of the child or the children. The court will always give joint custody in terms of the legal responsibilities and the legal rights surrounding the children. And so the question after that is now physical custody in terms of where the child will primarily live. So even when a mom comes to me and says she wants full custody, or when a dad says he wants full custody, my advice always at the get-go is that where paternity is not in dispute, no court will give you sole custody unless the father or the other parent is absent and disinterested and they don't show up. You serve them with court papers and they don't come. In those circumstances, sole custody may be granted, where somebody has completely abandoned the children. But where a parent shows up and says, I'm here, I admit I'm the parent, and I'm interested in the lives of my children, the court will always give joint custody. So joint custody is sort of a given, especially post-2010, where the Constitution says joint parental responsibility, whether the parties are married whether the parents are married to each other or not. And so on the issue of maternal preference, maternal preference is very interesting because the policy and the principles have been that children of tender years, that is children under the age of 10, should stay should stay with the mother, and that the mother will have the day-to-day care of the children. And based on also just what the Constitution says about equal parental responsibility, there have been attempts to push back at that. But even the courts that have said parents can have equal, physical custody have asked the parties to go and agree, have told the parties, I can give you equal, go and agree. You see, so there hasn't been a complete removal of maternal preference, except where there are exceptional circumstances, where it is very clear that it is not, this child or the children are not best placed with this particular mother. But then what I want to say also is that even when the interesting thing is, is based on what we've said, that you both come out as there's nobody, actually, to be honest, even as a lawyer, really nobody wins. Even when we get what we wanted, my client never leaves feeling that they won. Even when we fight very hard and we get exactly what we asked for, nobody ever leaves that place feeling, yes, we won. So because of that, sometimes even what you think is equal, you might say, let's say we split the week into two. And you know, recently I've thought about the story of Solomon, when Solomon had to decide a custody battle between two mothers. And what he proposed was for the child to be cut into two. You cannot cut the child into two. So even if you split the week, if I gave you 4 nights, I told you have the children 4 nights a week, while the other party has the children for three nights a week, you'd still feel that that is not equal. But you cannot split 7 into, you know what I mean? So I think even when we think about maternal preference is, I think it's not as strong as it used to be post 2010. I think increasingly there is more moving into the fathers also having more physical custody. And so people should not be as frightened as they seem to be. And I don't know how, I mean, a lot of moms are not very happy about how there is a pushback on maternal preference, but you should be ready when you go to court, because the principle is that the parents have joint and equal parental responsibility. And even when the court says, okay, the children will stay with the mother, it's not so much that the court is favoring the mother. It's just that the court has looked at the best interests of the children and determined what is best for the stability, what is best for these children. The court really explores and tries to see what is the best way of safeguarding the interests of the children. But you can't split the children into two straight in the middle. For the purpose of equality. Equality is subordinate to the best interests of the children. That's what people need to realize. That yes, equality is a principle in the Constitution and in the law, but it is subordinate to the best interests of the children, because the law and the principle, both locally and internationally, is that the interests of the children supersede and override all the other considerations. And then there was the issue of ownership of property in terms of joint ownership. I think joint ownership is a good thing, because what joint ownership does is that there's a presumption that, that you were intended to own it equally. I know a lot of wives have a hard time negotiating based on our culture and based on, you know, on incomes and everything. I think wives have problems negotiating, getting onto those titles so that they're joint, so that they have joint ownership. But if joint ownership, what the goodness with joint ownership is that the presumption is that you intended to own it equally. Although I have seen pushback as well, where people say even that half that you're, even that half interest you have, even that equal interest, you're holding it on my behalf because of one thing or another. But the presumption, the basic presumption is that if it is jointly owned, if you're both on the title, then at the dissolution of the marriage, the assumption is that you should share it, unless you can show very strong, solid reasons why it should not be shared equally.
Okay. Well, I know there's a lot we could say here. I know we are running out of time, but I'd like to go around and just have each one of you say some things. I think for Robert and Jennifer, it's for you as you reflect on what you've gone through and the challenges that you've faced. I know everything is not resolved. It's to say what you've learned. And then Jennifer, you can let us know how divorce care has helped in a few minutes, and then we'll just go around and each one of us will give, unfortunately, some closing remarks. This time just flies, Dr. Mugambi. I wish we had like 3 hours, but I know people need to leave to sleep. So Jennifer, let's start with you. Have the process finalized? What have you learned? And what would you say to a lot of people out there, especially about divorce care?
Okay, the process finally ended. Yeah, but I had very many lessons that I carried from that experience. And one is that you don't really have to fight over the children, because now this one I'm talking where I am at, the space that I am at after going through healing, after going through the program of divorce care, and I found my place. And I found that actually we can co-parent without a fight. And to that extent that I've allowed the children at their own time when they're free to talk to their father. I've given, like, it's free when he wants to see them, he can see them. So there's no that obstruction. So I've just realized for the sake of my own peace and sanity, just not to get involved in the fight, just to allow things to be, since he's equally their father as I am their mother. So that one has really helped as well. And second, that even what I learned from the process, and even after going through the divorce care program, that men, they equally suffer the same emotions that women suffer. Because initially I thought men don't, because they look like once they're out, they move on very fast. They get another lady to marry, they get children. So I could ask God, why do you let these men just to get away with it so fast? Yeah, but we understood is a way they cover. Okay, is a way of just dealing with the emotions, but they equally struggle the same way I do as a woman. So it has helped me to extend that grace to the other person as well, just knowing he's going through the same emotions that I am going through. Yes, and that has really helped me, even as I mentioned about a divorce care, just to process, the emotions, to break them down and to deal with each and everything that I had put under. And with that thing, it has given me a better space, even how to view the other person, and even how to view breakups. And that's why even I got involved just working with that other person who is going through separation and divorce, just to encourage them. That this is not the end of life. You can pick up your pieces, you can move on without hurting the other person or leaving casualties there. You can actually just move on, not necessarily getting another partner, but just embracing the fact that you are in another environment, in another space, and just trying to thrive there. And that has really worked, because I've seen many people who've come through our program, changing, transforming, and now they are better people. They have even the grace of forgiving and just leaving the person, and just knowing that despite the divorce, God loves them as a person. That fact has not changed, and God has the same plans and purpose for them. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I love what you've said, just maturing to a place of forgiveness and healing. There's hope beyond divorce. And the hope is not just remarriage, is also change of you as a person. Thank you very much. Robert Karanja, what is it that you would say, especially to the men? What have you learned as you reflect?
Thank you, Pastor Simon. I've learned a lot, and I think it's not a process that stops, but it's a continual process of learning and growth. I myself took the divorce care program between September and December of last year. And to me, that was really the icing on the cake of that whole deconstruction, reconstruction process. Because I was able to sit among others who had gone through divorce and separation. I was able to listen to other stories and also share stories, and really also get to the process of going through forgiveness, the process of forgiveness, and empathizing with others who've gone through this process. I am now getting to spend a lot more time with people who've gone through divorce and separation as a facilitator on the divorce care program. And what I find interesting is that 8 or maybe 9 out of 10 of the participants are women. So which means that a lot of men are still finding their way to such a program. And what I say to myself is, for every woman who's participating in the divorce care program, there's a man somewhere out there who's either probably still dealing or trying to manage what he's just gone through, and also receiving advice from others. So I would really encourage men to consider speaking more, talking a lot more, because really that's the only way that we can go through a process of growth, a process of forgiveness, because men don't have as many avenues as women would have. And maybe just to conclude, Pastor Simon, I'm currently leading a smaller group within Jennifer's wider divorce care program, where as the facilitator in that smaller group, I'm the only man. So I have 9 women that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis. And I know they're watching this program. I just wanted to give a shout out to Group 3, Season 5. You're watching this. And just to say that, you know, it's to me, it's been a process of growth. It's been a process of learning. And I'd really encourage men to get into those healthy discussions that possibly even help them become their fathers, but also go through a process of becoming better parents where they have to co-parent. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think we're going to be talking more with you people to see whether we can actually incorporate divorce care after man enough, especially for the men, because I think a lot of men need this. Let's come to you, Leah, and then we'll finish with Dr. Mugambi, because I'd want you to answer a question and pray for us as I also answer one. But Leah, someone has asked, what about if you acquired the property on your own? Do you still need, is it still considered jointly owned because you're married? As you say, you know, you can answer that as you say your last words of advice to people who are going through this from where you sit.
Okay. Now, if you acquired the property before you got married, that may not be considered matrimonial property unless your spouse contributed to, you know, for example, contributed to its development. So for example, if you bought a plot before marriage, it may not be matrimonial property. But if your wife or your husband has helped you put up a house or has helped, you know, do farming on that, which has raised the value of the property, then it becomes matrimonial property. And then the law talks about contribution in terms of, you have bought it cash with money from your own pocket, but there are different ways in which your spouse contributed to it because, you know, for example, there are different types of contribution. If she could have given you, he or she could have given you some money to help you put up that, buy that property, that is direct financial contribution. There could also be indirect financial contribution where they were buying the food, they were free house help, you know, the things that people do, which allows you to free up your income to purchase the property. In that case, your spouse's contribution is considered indirect financial contribution. And then there's also non-financial contribution. The law even says that companionship is contribution. Farming is contribution, you know, so there is contribution that you may think is not, you may think you bought it on your own, but the law would say that it is still matrimonial property and that your spouse contributed to it, even if your spouse did not remove money from their pocket to give you, to help you in purchasing that property. So just buying it on your own is one thing. It doesn't make it not matrimonial property. And then final words, in terms of final words, what I would say is that, you see, our law does not allow you to agree to divorce. So you can't go into the divorce court with an agreement that we've agreed to divorce. But interestingly, the law allows for you to agree to separate. And after you've lived apart on the agreement for 2 years and you have not felt the need to come back together, that is considered one ground for divorce, which is irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. So you cannot agree to divorce, but you are allowed to agree on matters regarding the children. I think once you've had a cooling off period, let's engage our pastors, engage our mediators, because the thing is,
Leah, are we still with you?
sorry, I disappeared. Am I back?
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, I hope I'm back now. Am I back?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so terribly sorry. Technology is not going to let us. But you can't agree. So I don't know know where I went off, but you can agree on the children, you can agree on issues surrounding the children, you can agree on the property. In fact, you can transfer this, you can sit down and transfer these properties to each other. It's much cheaper than going through a full-blown court process. So the law still gives you an opportunity to agree on the children and agree on the property. And I know people come with a lot of suspicion because there's a breakdown in the relationship, there's a breakdown of trust. And you think that even if you agree, this person will not honor what they agreed to do. But you can take that agreement and register it in court, and it gets the force of the law, so that it's not the court making the decision. You're making the decisions and you're agreeing, and then you put that agreement in court for the court to now adopt it, and it becomes a court order which the other person cannot go against without consequences. So that if they don't do what they said they would do, they're not only harming you, but they're also contravening a court order, which has consequences, including things like civil jail, attachment of salaries, and that sort of thing. So it's possible to agree. The problem is our law is very adversarial. So you have to say bad things about each other. You can avoid that adversarial process by sitting down and agreeing, putting those agreements in court. The court will adopt them. They'll have the force of law, and therefore that mitigates the breakdown of trust that is the subject that becomes very, very pronounced during a dispute like this. So it's possible to agree, even if you cannot agree on divorce, as far as the children are concerned, which, as we have heard, becomes the most acrimonious issue, and also the property also becomes very acrimonious. It is possible to agree on those and to engage mediators, engage your pastors. Let's engage our community, our parents, for example, or professionals who can help you to come to this agreement. It becomes a much easier and less acrimonious process.
Thank you very much, Leah, and I know you're available to help people, and we will be able to post your address on our page, in case that's okay, so that you can be able to help whoever may want to reach out to you.
I'm happy to help.
But thank you for what you've said. I think if we can get to agree, someone has asked here, and I want to answer that and come to you, Dr. Mugambi, to finish up. Someone has said, Colleen has asked, Simon, have you worked with anyone or a couple post-divorce or separation and felt or thought it could have worked if some things were done in time? Maybe any reversal or any couples that reunited? I would say yes. I've had a few couples. There's one I worked with that had actually started the process of divorce, but eventually they stopped it, and they've been able to work through issues. They needed just someone else to help them deal with some of the issues. So I really believe a lot of cases that end up very badly, if there was early intervention and good introspection and awareness, and even the humility of coming to God with our burdens and being able to forgive one another and be willing to deal with it. I think a lot of pain would be avoided. Dr. Mugambi, let's hear your final words, and then we will close because of time. But thanks for all of you who have kept with us.
Well, I thank you so much. Again, just to really appreciate what Robert and Jennifer are doing to help people walk with this. I think community is very important. These kind of micro communities. Leah, thank you again for this. I just want to emphasize something that has been said by everyone who's spoken. Number one, if you're going through this thing, and it's difficult, find good, loving, godly community to walk with. I think that's what I would say. If you're in a life group or you're in a church and you meet someone who's going through this thing, what they need at that point is love. They might not be very lovable at that point because of the pain that they're going through, but it's important for us to embrace them and to walk together with them as much as you can. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that, There might be relatives listening to me right now, and you know that your brother, sister, cousin is going through a difficult, nephew, niece going through a difficult time, and it's difficult to reach through to them. Do whatever you can. If whatever you can't, you can pray. But finally, many of the people who are listening to this right now, our listeners, and possibly even listening to a recording of this in the future, have not yet started that journey. I would say find a good program that helps build you as a man, that helps build you as a woman, man enough, come do this thing so that you can, find your masculinity and your femininity. And then when it's time for you to settle down with someone, go and find a good program, a good Ndoa program, good program that teaches you about marriage. Come to Mavuno or go to Nairobi Chapel, ICC, Parklands Baptist. Find a good program that will help you and be honest with you about what marriage is. Marriage is wonderful, but marriages are not made. Marriages might be made in heaven, as a pastor used to say, but they're lived out on earth. And so do whatever you can to build yourself up in that way. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, it's time for us to come to a conclusion. I know that we haven't talked about blended families, and in a few weeks, we're going to be coming back to that. But next week, same time, we're going to be talking about relationships and dating, laying the right foundation for love. And so I'm looking forward to that. So all of you young people and all of you married already, and those of you looking for love again, it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So you want to keep it here next week. Those of you who'd like to get the book that Dr. Mugambi has written, When Life Happens, is going to be available with us at Transform Nations. Feel free to let us know and we will give it to you. Those of you who'd like to join Divorce Care, again, if you reach out to us, we will transfer you to the right people. And in case you want to reach out, Leah, for any cases in this area, we would be glad. Let me end by just saying thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, for being here. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for this conversation. I believe as a church, we need to get to have these conversations, and as a society, and not turn a blind eye to them. These are realities that must be confronted with truth and grace, and we need to show love to one another. Jesus said, if you don't show love to the people next to you, then you don't even know God. Then the way we show that we're godly is when we love one another. And when love is lost and broken and it becomes, turns into hurtful situations, then that's the best time for the best of Christianity to show up. And I pray and hope that many more churches will be open enough to talk about these issues and be able to help those who deserve the help. So thank you, everyone. We wish you well. Those of you struggling with this, I pray that God will give you the grace and that many will find Jesus in these difficult situations. And you will know that God is able to hold your hand and walk with you. Thanks again. We appreciate the conversations and all the contributions. I think there are some people who have been so active. We're going to consider Mutindika Kuti and others to consider some gifts for some of you relentless in engaging us in these conversations. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. We appreciate it. Let me just say a quick prayer for us. Almighty God, we just want to thank you for the beauty of love. But also for the help that we get in terms of when love is broken and when our hearts are in pain, that we can look up to you for help. And then there's hope beyond these sorts of brokenness. There is hope for marriage, there's hope for relationships, there's hope for love. And your words, I remember, says faith, hope, and love These three remain, but the greatest of these is love. And so in a world like this, in places and landscapes where love has been broken and lost, and pain has checked in, we pray that you give us hope still in love, because God is love. And we pray that you help everyone in trouble, and you continue to help us as a community to work together and help each other. We bless you and pray for a good night in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. We will talk more, but thanks for coming.